This is a true story, and I've been obsessing over what the hell happened out there. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible without leaving out key details. My wife's uncle, Jay, bought some land just north of Spokane, Washington, with a friend of the family, Kay. They got it at a significant discount because a nearby aluminum smelter had polluted the ground, and it was impossible to use the water beneath the ground. They set up 2 plots, and each had a camper to live in. Jay had been progressively getting paranoid, claiming that people were stalking him and watching him from the trees. About 3 months after moving there, a man wandering through the woods had an interaction with Jay and ended up attacking him, breaking his jaw. Upon being arrested, the man said he was overcome with the desire to see if he could kill him with a single punch. 2 months later, Jay was murdered in his sleep on the couch in his camper. Kay found him and, immediately filled with fear and terror, ran as far away as he could until he stopped to call the police. There was sufficient evidence to identify the killer, and they quickly apprehended him. It turned out the killer was a 19-year-old boy who said he simply wanted Jay's bike. He beat him to death with a power tool that was lying on the floor nearby, completely bashing his brains in. Kay was almost always terrified at the thought of being there all alone after what happened with Jay, constantly looking over his shoulder whenever he exited the house. In constant fear, he finally convinced my pregnant wife and me to move in with him. The moment I drove off the highway onto the property, I became filled with dread. There were at least 250 crows covering the dirt road up to the property. The first night was hard. I couldn't sleep at all as I felt this uneasiness inside me. I stared into the forest, trying to find the cause of my intense fear. I assumed it was simply knowing that Uncle Jay was killed here. Even during the day, I was getting this eerie feeling and always felt like I was being watched from a distance. My wife and I always had a sense of fear, especially after dark. Things sort of normalized for a while until one day, Kay began puking and feeling very lightheaded all the time. I took him to the hospital, and they said he was probably just experiencing the flu. At this point, it was the anniversary of Jay's murder. 3 days after the date of Jay's death, Kay came running out of his camper, screaming, "I can't breathe." This woke my wife and me up, and we ran out to see what was wrong. Kay had gotten into his car and floored it, crashing into a nearby tree. I ran up and peered through the window to see the most intense and primal fear I've ever witnessed in someone's eyes. He was gasping and clutching his chest. Moments later, he breathed out one last time, and he was dead. We gave him CPR for 30 minutes until the EMS arrived. On July 10th, 1 year and 3 days after moving there with Jay, they were both dead. Now, it's only my wife and me alone on the property, living in constant fear and not understanding what had happened here. I don't know why we didn't leave right away. One day, I went out to get fresh water from a drum we kept for water and smelled the worst smell I'd ever encountered. The water container had a 1-inch opening on top, and inside, there were bits and pieces of chipmunks, spines and heads. They didn't fall in, something ripped them apart before putting them inside. The nights were getting worse and worse. I never saw anything, just always filled with unease and intense fear. I grew up deep in the mountains of North Idaho, with the nearest town being 30 miles away. Fear in the woods, even at night, is new for me. Hearing crashing and footsteps every night. One night, my wife and I returned home, and everything felt different. Although everything was right where we left it, nothing seemed in place. Looking around, I suddenly saw this orange, long-haired, mangy cat sitting on a stump. Its eyes were so intense, fiery, almost glowing but not quite. We started hearing branches snapping and pine needles crunching, seemingly from every direction. I was still staring at this cat, almost frozen in fear. Suddenly, a voice broke out, echoing throughout the forest. "Hello? Is anyone out here?" I thought it was a little girl, but something was off. My wife yelled back, "Hello? Are you okay?" The little girl continued, "Anybody?" The voice had changed its tone. "Help, help me." We yelled back several times without a response. "Somebody foo #king help me." The voice sounded evil this time. I was filled with more intense fear than I can ever describe, but suddenly, my wife became obsessed with the need to find this person, and she started to head off into the forest without a word. I grabbed her by the arm and told her something wasn't right, that we shouldn't go after it alone. I told her to get into the truck, and I would grab the spotlights. We weren't going on foot. We rolled the windows down and shone my intensely bright LED lights throughout the forest as we slowly crept down the road, yelling back. As we got further down the road, the voice struck out again, "Please, won't anyone foo #King help?" The sounds were difficult to pin down in the woods, but this one was very close. I hit the brakes and stopped immediately. We shone the lights and yelled back, searching. There was no sign of anyone when suddenly, the voice exploded into the cabin of the vehicle as if they were standing right outside my window. "Help. Me? Somebody foo #King help." The sound left my ears hurting and ringing. I hit the gas and didn't look back. I called the police when we were on the highway, telling them about the encounter we had there, still shaken from it. The police encouraged us that everything is gonna be okay, and they said the patrol car was on the way to check the property. The police checked the property and the nearby forest, but were unable to locate anyone. No one was there. The following morning, I packed our stuff, and we were out of that evil, haunted place. My wife gave birth the next day. Things started to get normal the moment we left, and we never stayed there again after the baby was born. What the hell could do these things? I never even believed in paranormal things before, but I don't know what else could have happened.